Testing is one of the key elements of the Major League Baseball protocols. I think with the number, they've sought feedback from a ton of infectious disease specialists throughout the country and have put a protocol in place that does its best to try to ensure everyone's health and well-being. And that includes a lot of testing for not only players, but staff. And that testing will occur initially on an intake screen where every player and staff in the tier 1 and tier 2 that are effectively those that are involved in the day-to-day operations of either our major league camp or our alternate site camp will be tested when they come in, and they won't be allowed access to the facility until they clear that testing. And then once they're within that group, there will be regular testing from that point on until we finish playing. So the first step is they do need to take a test. If there is a positive test, they will be quarantined for a period of time. I believe that's 14 days, but I would need to confirm that. We've had a few isolated cases. There have been a few from players that have been home, kind of just at their houses spread throughout the country. A couple of cases in the Dominican, and then a few cases in our Goodyear facility. The encouraging thing on that front is all of those cases have been isolated and that there has not been any spread within our environment. And then thankfully, all of those individuals have either recovered or are only showing mild symptoms. We have talked with every high-risk individual to have an individual conversation with them to explain the risks of returning the environment, the protocols that are in place to try to ensure health and well-being for everyone, and then have given all of them the option of whether or not they would choose to participate. Right now, I'm not aware of any players that have chosen to opt out, and there have only been a couple of staff members that have chosen to opt out. But we would be fully supportive if anyone felt that this wasn't the right environment for them to not participate. We've spent countless hours, Anthony, trying to work through that because this is a unique circumstance that none of us have encountered before, and add to it that we're not really sure how this will play out because this is not the normal case of planning for the regular baseball injuries or ailments that we're used to dealing with during the course of the season. So we spent a lot of time trying to work through that. We do feel like we need to prioritize having enough depth to get through whatever may come our way over the next 60 plus games. And so I would expect that our group of players will be primarily focused around providing depth to the major league team. There may be a handful of players that are more prospect-oriented players that we're trying to get developmental reps, but I would expect that to be a smaller group. Our financial losses will be extraordinary this year, but I don't expect that we will have any short-term decisions that will be impacted by finances. Rob Manfred addressed that the other day in his remarks. I think we would have all preferred to get to this point of starting baseball in a slightly different path, but that's not the reality. And I could understand any fans' frustration that they may have with a lot of parties within baseball right now, but hopefully everyone could look forward and turn the page and think about getting back onto the field and the baseball that we have in front of us. Our focus right now is there's so many logistics to work through to get spring training up and running again and get all of our players and staff here and get our site at Progressive Field and our alternate site at Lake County running, that we're primarily focused on that. We understand that there may come a point in time where circumstances dictate that we may not be able to play. Obviously, our hope is that the protocols that we have in place will be sufficient enough to at least keep our players and staff healthy when they're around each other at the ballpark. So our coaches and staff and players have done an extraordinary job to this point to be ready. We've had conversations throughout this time of being away from the game, at least together, where we've tried to work with each player individually to make sure that he would be prepared to go whenever it was that we would start again. And our coaches and again our staff has put in a tremendous amount of time working with each player to make sure that's the case, because this isn't when we start our activities on July 1st, that's not day 1 of spring training. That's the equivalent of day 26 of spring training. So we're going to have to jump right into simulated games and things like that to be able to make sure we're ready for the start of the season. And we really do feel that our players and staff are ready to do that. It's a very preliminary draft at this point. I wouldn't want to get into any specifics around the schedule because we may go forward with the draft that it is, or there may be other changes. So probably a little bit premature to comment on that. That's really going to be up to the state of Ohio, and they have to kind of give us some guidance on what they might be comfortable with, and then it would be up to us to adapt a plan in which we could do that in a safe way. I think the one thing, given all of the unknowns that we have and all of the variables, I think our priority right now is making sure that we can get all of our staff and players into Cleveland, get them on their way to preparing and starting games, and then kind of reassess and see what the opportunities may be to play in front of fans. But right now our focus is just trying to get up and running. I'm not sure that it has. I think, again, we're excited to actually get Frankie back on the field with all of our other players and have a 2020 season and get started. And I think that's solely where we're focused. We expect Tyler, he's going to be able to jump right in. He's been working out regularly in Cleveland and is really put in a lot of work to be prepared for the spring training 2.0 to start again. And now he's ready and chomping at the bit to get going with everyone else. There will be innumerable things that we learned from going through this. I think someone said it really well the other day, never let a good crisis go to waste. So we're trying to, we've adopted a lot as an organization, both in how we operate remotely within the front office, how our coaches and support staff connect with players, the opportunities we have to do some remote coaching and working with players when we're not alongside of them that could be a good template for us for off seasons moving forward. So there's a wide variety of things that we've learned operationally, organizationally. I would say probably the overwhelming sentiment from talking to players, coaches, and all of us within the organization is it's reaffirmed for us just how much we love baseball and how much we miss it. And I think we will not take it for granted when we all get back together to start playing again. That's certainly been tough, Jensen, just not being around everybody together in the same way that we're so accustomed to. I mean, we spend, as well as anyone, we spend over 200 days together from the time spring training starts till the end of the season. And we spend more time around each other than our families. I think there are a lot of families around that are ready to kick us all out of the house and get back to seeing each other. And so we're definitely looking forward to that. It does. I think the encouraging thing for us is our players seemingly have taken ownership of that. It's one thing for me to talk about it or Tito to talk about it when our players are the ones that are championing it and talking about how important it is for them to act in a way that's not only taking care of themselves, but taking care of their teammates by making good decisions away from the field. That's when it will be really powerful. And we've heard from multiple players and talking to a handful of guys even over the last few days, they see this as an opportunity and a challenge for us to be better than every other team. Because to the extent we can do a better job of keeping ourselves healthy and not, getting each other sick, the better chance we have to win more games during the season because we'll be able to play with the guys that we're counting on to be a big part of our team. Hopeful, Tom, to assess a probability, I think would be, I have no idea how to do that. I think what we've learned is the virus is still very real and very present. And I think we have to respect that. And to the extent we let our guard down, that's going to diminish our chances to be successful. So part of our messaging has been we need to stay consistent no matter what's happening externally, no matter if it looks like things might be subsiding or rates are going down. We need to continue to make sure we're adhering by the best practices and protocols to give ourselves and the league the best chance of getting through it. So I will say the protocols that are in place are very extensive, and I think we can do a good job of mitigating the chance of spread within our environment. The big question will be how much are we getting exposure outside of our environment and what other risks are introduced. But hopefully we can manage those as well. We will structure our camp. It will look different than a normal spring training. I mean, we will have players work in pods. We will spread out a lot more. We'll have activities, as many outdoor activities as possible. We will use both the home and visiting clubhouses in Cleveland to keep our groups spread out. We will change the cadence and the way guys prepare for on-field activities and do those in smaller groups rather than in the larger team stretches you may be accustomed to seeing. So there are literally changes all across the board on how we will operate and prepare, even from, I'm sure you've read, like guys using their own baseballs and having a wet rag rather than licking their fingers. You will see things that are noticeably different. I think the way we've done that is we've kind of segmented out into different groups. We'll obviously have the group of players that's kind of a progressive field that's getting ready to start the season and compete at the major league level. We'll have another group of depth players in that alternate site that will also be getting pretty regular reps. They will play inter-squad games against each other to try to simulate activity. But then we have another group of players that we're going to have to coach remotely. And I think that's been a big initiative that we've spent a lot of time on over the last few weeks and few months, is how do we make sure we do the best we can under the circumstances to make sure every player continues on his developmental path so they get the most possible out of 2020. And our coaches and our support staff, our sports scientists, our strength and conditioning coaches, our athletic trainers throughout the organization have worked incredibly hard together to work with each player to make sure that they have the developmental resources and coaching resources that they need to continue to improve. I would want to stay away from specific comments, Jason, on particular players. I think to the extent there are questions about individual guys, I would probably defer those comments to them so they could speak for themselves rather than have me speak for them. We are trying to get our staff and players here, as soon as possible and arrange travel for them, and then coordinate intake testing. The logistics around testing that many individuals is, as you can imagine, complicated, especially when we have to make sure that there's only a certain number of individuals in any space at any particular time. So that's kind of guiding our arrival and intake for players, and so we should know more in the next few days. This is an opportunity. This is going to be such a unique season for baseball that I think this is an opportunity for us to potentially experiment with some of those rules. I think it's been a great rule in the minor leagues in that it does create some intrigue in the 10th inning on, and has the additional benefit of not having really extended games that can really tax a roster. And given the circumstances with our major league team this year and all of the uncertainties, not having to deal with 17, 18, 19, 20 inning games I know I'll sleep a little bit better at night. We look for opportunities to do that, Jensen, but we also feel that the group of starting pitchers we have remains a strength for our roster, and we want to make sure that we're providing those players opportunities to make an impact. And as I shared earlier, that group in particular, along with the rest of our staff, has done an extraordinary job of preparing for the start of spring training. So we're expecting them to be ready to go. And the good news for us is that provides us additional flexibility with how we put our roster together, because we won't have to necessarily cover for innings that starters aren't able to absorb because they weren't prepared.